Hi, I'm Jared, and this is Hebrews 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the ones he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son." Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate and not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while, as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. See that no one is sexually immoral or godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. Afterward, as you know, when he wanted to inherit this blessing, he was rejected. Even though he sought the blessing with tears, he could not change what he had done. You have not come to a mountain that can be touched and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them, because they could not bear to hear what was commanded. Even if an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, "I am trembling with fear." But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See to it that you do not refuse him who speaks. If they did not escape when they first refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we, if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven? At that time, his voice shook the earth. But now he has promised, "Once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens." The words "once more" indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. So, there's an awful lot going on in this passage, like lots of different imagery and weaving together of ancient truths and wisdom. There's salvation, there's encouragement, discipleship, then there's apocalypse language, sacrifice, sexual immorality, there's a couple of mountains. So it feels like a bit of a summary of sort of all God's work with and story for humanity. It goes all the way up to the end of this earth, basically. So needless to say, there's a lot to understand, and I don't think we can go through it all here. But the part that jumped out to me were those bits about discipline and how the writer sort of holds up Jesus as an example of how to endure discipline and hardship, and then uses Esau as an example of how not to do that. So there's a link here between God's discipline and the example of Esau losing his inheritance because of his lack of discipline. But I think the writer means this as an encouragement for us, and that God's discipline leads to good and better for us, both in this life and also afterwards. So he gives us this example of when Esau sort of takes the easy way out, and this is sort of likened to godliness, and how this contrasts the encouragement to endure hardship during the discipline of God. So the writer takes us through how the discipline of God is meant for our benefit and leads to a harvest of righteousness and peace, and it leads to holiness and seeing the Lord, which is what we're all wanting. We're then encouraged not to fall short of God's grace and not to be sexually immoral or godless like Esau. So what did Esau actually do? So in the story, back in Exodus, he was out in the fields, and he came to a point where he was completely starving. So he came home at the point of starvation. Jacob was cooking up a stew, and he was so hungry that he sold his inheritance as the firstborn to Jacob for that single meal, in that one moment of hardship and unpleasant hunger. So as someone whose default setting is hungry, I can particularly relate to Esau's struggle here. He was at the point of death. Resisting that meal would have been a real struggle. In this case, I think the writer gives us a very drastic example of hardship and what it looks like not to endure that for the promise of something better. But again, that contrast with Jesus, who did endure that struggle and did receive the promise. So this promise of better is linked to our inheritance, it's linked to our identity, if we can accept God's discipline. So the writer specially mentions sharing holiness and seeing the Lord. So this passage is an encouragement, but it's also a challenge. It's basically saying things will be hard, it will not be pleasant, but the challenge is, how highly do we value what there is to gain? How highly do we value sharing holiness, righteousness, peace, seeing the Lord? What is the big picture here? So Esau came to the wrong conclusion and believed that his inheritance was not worth his earthly life. But the writer is saying to us that the opposite is true. Do we behave like Esau and jeopardize our inheritance for a single easy meal? Or do we endure the hardship? Do we have discipline? Despite that hardship, can we do the work knowing that it's going to hurt, but it'll be worth it in the end? So I found this really helpful context, really helpful reminder, and really helpful wisdom for living this life for Christ in the world that we're in. Things are going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. Simple but effective reminder and encouragement. I think this is particularly poignant after Rich's talk a couple of weeks ago, where we learned about not taking the Lord's name in vain, and that actually what that means is that we carry the name of Yahweh. Like, that's our identity, that's our sort of purpose, that's our inheritance. And I think I felt a real stark contrast. That I don't want to be like Esau, who would so easily give this up because I've made light, the discipline of God. So my question, mostly to myself, but is like, are we giving up our inheritance for a single meal? When there is Christ to gain, does the easy way out feel like a trade that's in keeping with our identity as carriers of the name of Yahweh? So take heart in the hardship of discipline, and I hope that's encouraging. Father, thank you for your love for us. Your desire to see us harvest righteousness and peace and holiness is far beyond ours. Thank you for your discipline that helps us train for this eventuality. And Father, would you make us sons and daughters who can endure hardship and ultimately achieve the prize of Jesus. Amen.